right. Well, welcome everyone to this week's Culture Dive. My name is Sandy. I'll be your hostess, I guess, this week. And we are culture diving into South Africa. And I'm so excited about this because I personally feel like I have a lot of learning and absorbing to do. So I've been very much looking forward to being educated by the people who would know best, right? The people who live and understand South Africa the most, the locals. And that's all what Culture Dive is about us explorers and travelers learning from one another and learning about each country and being able to absorb information that you can't necessarily find on Google. And what I very much enjoy as a substitute during these times when we can't exactly travel as we used to in the same ways is being able to interact with those and hear different perspectives and views. And I kind of feel like it's sitting at a cafe somewhere and hearing and learning from a local or sitting in a hostel or something like that. So really looking forward to today. If you yourself are watching this live and have any questions for our panelists about South Africa, feel free to write them in the comments below and we'll try and get to them as we can. And if you're watching this recorded, then still feel free to comment and share because we'll continue to interact with you as you need. But with that being said, I'm going to actually turn this over to each of our panelists to have them introduce themselves and share a little bit about themselves. So why don't we start with Courtney?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney. I'm from Cape Town, South Africa, born and raised Cape Townian. So I'm South African through and through, and I am a photographer full-time. I used to work in corporate spaces, organizational development, psychometrics, and all of that, and I've left all that behind and gone into the creative field full-time. I was doing that on the side, and I do have a keen interest in travel, always been interested in learning about different cultures and eager to experience different things. So that's why I volunteered to be part of the panelists so that I can just share my perspective on this country that I've lived in all my life.
Thank you very much, Courtney. Annie, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I also live in this beautiful country of mine, South Africa. I've been lucky. I lived in Namibia for a while and also in Germany, but I must say I'm back. I'm happy to be back in my own country again. It's such a beautiful place.
Yeah, you have a lovely view behind you as well.
Yeah, with the ocean behind, yeah. And I've been working in the travel industry since I moved back from Germany. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, it's very nice to have you. Thank you. And Sane.
Hi, my name is Sane Mazibugo. I am a South African, born and bred in South Africa, but I was born in KwaZulu-Natal, which is a different province where I live now, which is predominantly filled with Zulu-speaking people, as well as quite a lot of Indians, and but we also have other races as well. So I moved to Cape Town about 5-6 years ago, and this area is predominantly filled with coloreds and whites and Xhosa people. So culturally, I had to kind of adjust to a different culture. But I'm a Durban girl, and Cape Town is my home now.
Beautiful, thank you. And last but definitely not least, Peter.
Well, first, I'd just like to say I'm very thankful to be here along with all these ladies. I'm the only man here, so I have to represent, I guess. I'm originally from a small town called Oudtshoorn, which is kind of like, to put it in perspective, like an Arizona area of South Africa, kind of semi-desert. And I've been working on cruise ships for the past 8 years. So doing a lot of traveling and having to adapt to a lot of different demographics and cultures. So that's one of the things I'm currently doing, but obviously like everybody else, stuck at home for now, and happy to be on the panel, happy to tell you all about it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, I'm really excited to hear all these different perspectives about ways to see your country the best. But first, we always like to kind of start with getting at least some insight into I guess, customs or traditions. And so I'm going to just throw this out there and allow each of you to share with us perhaps one particular custom or tradition that has significance to you in your life. Is there anyone that would like to start? Maybe I'll start with Annie.
Okay, I think we are a really interesting country when it comes to customs and traditions. Nelson Mandela named the country the Rainbow Nation, and it's a very fitting name because it's so many different cultures, and with all the cultures come different food, different languages. Just to mention that we 11 official languages within the country, and with each culture, there's different customs. So my home language is Afrikaans. So in the Afrikaans, amongst the Afrikaans people, we've got different customs than in some of the other groups within the country. And I would say what is in general for all the South Africans is what the Americans would call a barbecue. We love braai. I think South Africans is maybe the country in the world that braais the most. So when we talk about the braai, it's your typical barbecue, but it's mostly with wood, and we eat a lot of meat. And within the northern parts of the country, there's a lot of maize growing. So people would eat a lot of what we call a pap. It's like a maize, maize pap with mealies. Because there grows a lot of maize with the braai or the barbecue. Within the Western Cape, we have a more grain types growing. So in the Western Cape, we'll have something like we call a braai broodjie, which is basically a toasted sandwich, which is very typical of the Western Cape of South Africa, referring to food now. And so I can go on, but I'll give the other people a chance to talk as well.
Yeah, sure. Does anyone want to pick up there? Courtney, go ahead.
I think one thing that I can think of is South African Christmas time is always quite unique. So most of the world, you always see these pictures of, a white Christmas and it's snow, and it's the complete opposite over here. So it's sunshine, it's like 30 plus degrees Celsius during December time. So Christmas looks very different here than what you see in the movies and all of that stuff. So I think for us, like Annie mentioned, we do a lot of braaiing. So December holiday period, somebody in South Africa, there will be a braai every single day, somewhere in the country. Braaiing is quite a big thing. In December, we even have our Heritage Day, they call National Braai Day. That's how big of a deal it is. Anyway, that's besides the point. So back to Christmas. So it's a time for a lot of family, a lot of friends. So people usually go crazy in December. The deeper into December you go, the more people decide they want to party. So things sometimes get out of hand depending on which circles you roll in. Thankfully not mine, but okay. So you see a lot of interesting things that end up on social media during December. But in general, I think during the December holiday period, it's quite a jovial time in the country. People organizing a lot of get-togethers, and also work-wise, things just become more relaxed, especially if you work in a corporate space. You'd know that very well. Work kind of stops in November, and people start cruising through December into January. So it's kind of, there's like this lull and this very relaxed atmosphere during December times. And it's full with lots of food. Christmas time, there's always food galore. And you can't even specify what kinds of food because it really depends on your cultural background, your family, your friends, your likes, your dislikes. So it really, Christmas looks different in different parts of South Africa.
It's amazing. It's so interesting that that you pointed out how different it would be from what people conceptualize as Christmas. Would it be a good time for someone to visit, though, you would think?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Peter, do you have more on that?
I just like to add to Courtney and Annie, both mentioned it for example, Courtney mentioned that Christmas is being celebrated differently all over South Africa. And I think Annie mentioned we have 11 official languages. And with that comes this melting pot of different cultures. So even though same as Annie's, I'm a part of the Afrikaner culture, it's just, I'm not strictly following that specific belief system or a cultural system. It's because I've picked up so much with friends of mine from all different cultures within South Africa that it kind of becomes, like Annie also rightfully said, Nelson Mandela said, a rainbow nation. Like it's an amalgamation of different colors that kind of work well together in any kind of season, for that matter, as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And do you have any other particular customs or traditions that you personally enjoyed?
Myself?
Yeah.
Well, I think I actually, a little funny story. I think it's going to add to everybody. We talked about braai already, and I think everybody does that. But in 2010, during the Soccer World Cup, I lived in Melville in Johannesburg, and across the street from me lived a very famous, well, I guess you can call him a hip hop artist globally, but we have a unique strain of music called Kwaito. He was a Kwaito star, Zola 7. And he literally lived across the street from us, and we had a braai together, a barbecue together. Now, this to make this understandable, it's several different cultures that came together that day, and we all had a braai. And he asked me, where did all the bad stuff happen? Why was the reason? It was all about potjiekos and the recipe for the best potjiekos, and that kind of like just sums up the way we approach each other, is the fact that we can enjoy similarities and things together, like we did that day as well. So I would think a big cultural thing, and I think that'll cross every single 11 national language, would be the fact that we love to barbecue, we love to socialize together with one another as well.
Oh, so nice. Sine, do you have anything else, any final things to add about traditions?
Yeah, definitely. If I had to advise anyone on what time to travel to South Africa, I'd say start coming around September, because September, as Courtney had, is Heritage Month. No matter where you go, especially for the last 2 weeks of September, you will see everybody dressed up in the traditional attires with pride, and there's just celebrations everywhere on the streets, in corporate areas. Everybody's just embracing and celebrating their culture. So I'd say come from September all the way through to December to see the true South African experience the December fever. And each year there's normally a catchphrase that we pick up around November, and that everybody's saying that catchphrase, or there's that one song that is being played repeatedly. So definitely the last 4 come through, please.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I absolutely love this conversation when I find that when I talk to, it doesn't even actually matter what country we talk to, it always kind of turns to food, right? Like somehow there is a very strong connection between traditions and cultures and celebration and what we eat. And I think it influences us. So I'm just going to bite the bullet here and let's talk about food. It's kind of like lunchtime for me too. So, but let's talk about South African food, traditional, modern, whatever you think we should know, especially for people that are traveling, things that we should try, things that we might not expect, or things that, I don't know, teach us. Peter, do you want to start?
There's a lot of things we can say about food. I think firstly we need to note that food is essentially what kind of sets us apart as South Africans, because we have all these different nationalities, but at the end of the day we all celebrate it together, and with our food. And I think food is essentially what gives us individualism. I mean, all of us mentioned braai and potjiekos and things like that we can do all over the world essentially, but when it comes down to something as simple as a koeksister, which is a dessert kind of and people will know what it is. It's traditional food. It's a deep fried sticky dough braid with a syrupy center, essentially. If that doesn't make your mouth water, then I don't know what will. And there's a few other things. Bobotie is another thing that in my culture that we use, which is a kind of a curry-based meat dish with egg and everything. But there's a lot of different foods that we like to do traditionally, and also with each season, it kind of changes with that as well. If you're thinking about winter, you'll have more soups and homemade breadies. Compared to summer, mostly you'll be standing outside around a fire.
Wow. Yeah, my eyes kind of like popped out when you talked about that dessert there. I was like, I need to know more about it. What was it called again?
It's a cook sister. Means if you translate it directly, it's a cake sister.
Cake sister.
Yeah.
All right, so I didn't hear that wrong. Yeah. Awesome. Annie, do you have anything there to add about food?
Yes, I think I will agree with what Peter said. Along with all the different cultures we have, we all influence each other. And if you look back at history, we had a period in time where the Malay people came to South Africa, where the French came, the English, and each culture group that came brought some food ideas with them. The Malay people brought these wonderful spices with them. Then later on, that was sort of in the 1600s, they came as slaves. And then later on in the middle 1860s, the Indian people came, and along with them also all these beautiful Indian curries. All the other people within South Africa also have all these wonderful, like the pap and sauce that you have. And the potjie kos that Peter mentioned is basically a pot that you put on the fire with 3 little legs, and then you make the food within this pot. And all these wonderful cultures and the wonderful food that each culture brought to us, we don't always keep it separate. We mix those things, and that's what the South African cuisine is all these wonderful spices and different foods from different, almost like different areas of the world that's combined and that make our food so special. What is trending now before COVID, I must say, was having gourmet tours to South Africa, because we have really exquisite restaurants. Yeah, it's mouth-watering, along with the cook sisters and the potjie kos and the braai and the normal things. It's we have all this interesting foods from different cultures, yeah, as I mentioned.
Amazing.
Can you add
Sine.
on to what- if I can just add on to that.
Sure.
And it also, it's quite interesting that depending on where you are in South Africa, you will relate to a meal in a certain way. For an example, the pap meal that you speak about, in KZN, we add salt to it. But if you get to the northern parts of the country, Gauteng and so on, they don't add salt to it. So you get a variation of the same food, but prepared differently in different areas. How in KZN, we will go on about a bunny chow and how we want it Indian made and how it needs to be a certain way. And then you get to Joburg and they have what they call a kota. So a kota is half a loaf of bread that's filled with everything: chips, eggs, Russian sausages, meat, everything, and that's the delicacy. So if you get a chance and you really want to experience the food, I would say if you're in Gauteng, try going to Vilakazi Streets. I believe there's like a whole array of foods that you're able to taste out there to get a bit of a taste of the South African cuisine.
Is it like a street stall or market street, or is it like a street with like restaurants and things?
There are restaurants and there are some street vendors as well, but there are African cuisine restaurants there.
Yeah. Sounds like it was like a mashup of just everything, right? Oh.
Did you say Vilakazi Street? I couldn't hear.
Yes, Vilakazi Street. Yeah.
And they say that's the only street in the world where 2 people that won the Nobel Peace Prize grew up in the same street. That's where Nelson Mandela and Bishop Tutu lived before. A proud street within South Africa.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that's a pretty powerful street then. Courtney, did you want to add anything in regards to food and traditions?
I think what Sunny mentioned is so significant because depending on where you go in South Africa, the same food might be completely different. And there's something in Cape Town that Cape Town does really well that I haven't found when visiting other parts of South Africa, and that's a Gatsby. So it's similar to what Sunny mentioned, but it's not like half a loaf of bread. It's a longer piece of bread. I'm going to try and describe this as best I can. So you know how long about a French loaf is? It's quite like a long thing.
Yeah.
But this isn't as narrow as a French loaf. It's quite wide, as if you were cutting, think of an enlarged hot dog bun, like a really big one. So probably about maybe this long or so. And it's filled with everything. So you get different kinds of things. You get like, you can have what they call masala steak. So that's like a very spicy steak with hot chips. And then sometimes you have eggs on there. Sometimes you have salads on there. Sometimes you get something that's just called a chip roll. So you'll just have like hot chips. You guys call it French fries, but it's thicker cut. And it's just there and it's got different sauces on. So that if you come to Cape Town, that's something you have to have. It depends on personal taste, but it's a very well-known Cape Town. You can ask any Cape Townian, they'll know what a Gatsby is. So there are all the different kinds of cultures should know about it, but I think colored people probably popularized it the most. So you can ask any colored person on the street and they will tell you, yes, they love Gatsby's, and they'll tell you where they can get the best one also, depending on the area.
I was inducted when I moved to Cape Town, so I got to that.
That's usually one of the first things somebody will try and give you. If you meet a colored person, they'll probably try and give you a Gatsby first before you eat anything else. So yeah, so that's probably one of the foods that stand out the most for me. That and trifle in December. I don't know if any of the other panelists enjoy trifle. I love trifle. And that's kind of like a staple, and everybody makes trifle differently. You've got like sponge cake. Some people have fruit, some have custard, some have chocolate pudding inside. So every house, there's no standard trifle recipe. Every house's trifle is different. You won't find the same trifle in two households. Unless you bought a trifle at a supermarket, then you might find something generic, but every household's trifle is different. So yeah, I think December time, or at least for us in December time, Christmas lunch looks something like lamb, you have chicken, you have beef, you have different kinds of vegetables. You have different kinds of vegetables in something, like you might have cauliflower and broccoli in white sauce with cheese on the top. It's really like Christmas, you have food for probably 3, 4, 5 days maybe. South Africans don't know when to quit in December when it comes to food. So you will always have food left over, and there will always be people in your house. So yeah, that's what I can share about the food part of it.
I think, Sandy, just to add on to what Courtney just said, I think depending on where you go in South Africa, it really depends on the cuisine. I always explain to guests of mine when I meet them on a cruise ship, I always explain that South Africa is like when you take the states and you condense it into a smaller, like we're only the size of Texas essentially, but we have the same amount of diversity. For example, the place I am right now is called Strand, which is in False Bay area, very close to Cape Town, which I would compare to like the Florida of South Africa, because it's a lot of older people moving down here, for example, just to get to the sun and stuff. Where I'm originally from, like I said, Arizona, Cape Town is very much like California with its wine and mountains and such. But it really depends. There's only one place in South Africa that I don't really know of any other place in the world like it, and it's the west coast of South Africa. And on the west coast, funny enough, the world's best restaurant. It's not a Michelin restaurant because it doesn't have that, but it's one of the world's best restaurants. It's called Wolfgat, which means essentially the whole of the wolf where it lives. And it's in Paternoster on the west coast. It's one of the world's, I think at the moment, if I'm not mistaken, it's currently voted the world's best restaurant, if I'm not mistaken.
Amazing. Do you know what it is about that establishment that makes it the best in the world then?
So it is fine dining. So it's a lot of little funny little treats that you get with it, but it's with a South African twist with it as well. I also believe, since they're based on the West Coast, that it's predominantly what would you say, fish and crayfish and things of that nature. Since it is on the West Coast, which is known for that kind of, yeah.
Amazing. I always, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
If I might pop in on Wolfgat, what is makes it very special is that most of the food in the restaurant they serve, they don't buy it, they pick it. It's what they call a foliage restaurant. They collect the food, they go out in the morning into the ocean and collect whatever is fresh, whatever is available, or into the field and they pick some salad in the field, or little of the things they buy. They try to source it fresh from nature. So it's not always all the different courses might not appeal to all the taste, but it's really interesting, and the way they serve it is beautiful. But I think that's what makes them outstanding, is that they collect the food themselves in the field and in the ocean.
So like beyond like farm to table, like they're just kind of going out whatever's out there in the world, like naturally, and then bringing it into fruition.
Exactly. So they will go and pick mushrooms in the field, or and they'll go into the ocean in the morning and pick their own mussels from the rocks, and different things, whatever they can find in the ocean. Then at dinner, and create something with it.
Oh, that's amazing. So I get the sense, like, you go to South Africa, you have like all these options, right? From like super high end to like, just street vendors and just like all these different textures and tastes. I'm really curious always. So for each of you then, if you, when you go away and get a little homesick, like what's that meal that you're craving?
I can just tell you right now, it's not going to be a meal. It's biltong and droewors. It's it's jerky made the right way, Sandy. I cannot really explain it. It's just, I actually, since I work on a cruise ship, I found a guy in Florida making this biltong and droewors, and he delivers it to the ship for me because I cannot go without it. It's really a taste of home in every way.
Amazing. Anyone else?
No, I agree with Peter.
For me, it would have to be samp and beans. Like,
can you say that one more time, Sine?
Samp and beans. So the way that my mother cooks it, like it's a love letter. It's a love letter on a plate. Samp and beans with bones. That's my go-to meal. And when I go home, my mom knows what she needs to prepare for me. So that's my meal.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, I think anyone who travels knows that, like, while it's amazing to be out there, there's something about that, like, touch of home, that memory, something, any taste. You just miss it. Yeah, so with that, you guys, when it comes to, we talked about traditions and foods and all of that. If someone's traveling, what would you advise? Like, are there things that explorers or travelers should be kind of aware of when they're traveling to South Africa and mindful of, I guess, when it comes to traditions and customs?
I think I speak for most of us on this panel. I mean, in Afrikaans culture, it's very important to say please and thank you, and just to be polite, generally speaking. But a big thing in all the cultures is respect. And I think that's worldwide, though. Respect to the elders, especially. And I think that comes with centuries of history for every generation, for every culture in the world, I would say. But South Africa is very big on that. At least in my circles, the ones I move around in, is respect each other and respect each culture for that matter as well. But also, I mean, I don't know if it's chivalry or it's just tradition, or the fact that if there's older people, we stand up for them or let them go first. If it's a woman, ladies first, kind of things like that, which in generally I think is worldwide, but I think it's very big in Afrikaner culture, at least speaking again for myself. But I think the majority, it's all about respect.
Yeah, no, I think that's very valid. I think it's important to, I guess, understand that people interpret that differently all around the world. So it's not like one culture is more polite than the other, but they show it, I guess, in different ways. And so, yeah, that's a great example of, how to pay respect, or be mindful in South Africa. Is there anything else from any of you ladies that you could think of?
I would say to anyone, if you can get a chance to, travel each of the provinces, because there's so much history and so much culture in each of the provinces. As I said, I'm a Zulu girl from KZN, and there's a place in northern KZN called Shagaland, where they tell you about the whole history of Shaga's chieftaincy and how he took over whichever areas he took over and so on. But the one thing that I would say is common throughout is how we all celebrate. Show me a South African province or South African culture where there's no dance involved in these celebrations. Obviously, we've got different attires that we wear. So if you are in areas, please don't be alarmed at the fact that our Zulu maidens would typically only wear a skirt and then would have beads on top. So that's a cultural thing. That's what the Zulu maidens do wear. And then obviously the married woman would wear dress a little bit different to the maidens. As much as I'm Zulu, I am completely in love with the Xhosa female attire. I think there's no other culture that does it well for me as much as the Xhosa attire. If you get a chance to go to the northern side, to Limpopo, they've got very, very colorful attires. It just pops off color everywhere. If I'm not mistaken, that's the Venda culture. And also, if you get a chance to in Limpopo, while we're still talking about food, they've got one of the countries.
Listen, can you just repeat that again? You just cut out.
The fruits, their mangoes and their apples are just world class. So yeah.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Yeah, let's talk about travel. We're in a travel group, so.
Oh, sorry, where did you lose me?
No,
So I was
don't be
talking about.
sorry. Don't be sorry. I think that was like the perfect segue into us being able to kind of hear from you guys on what is, where should we go? What should we do? What should we see?
Sandy, so as I mentioned, I work on a cruise ship and I've met people all over the world, and obviously you make friends with these people as well. And I've always invited them to come visit. And out of the hundreds of people I've invited, I've done 3 tours already with friends of mine from ships. And what I always do, and what I will do until the day I die, I will take them through the garden route. It's one of the most beautiful parts of South Africa, I personally believe, because I'm from there. So I'm a little bit biased. But it really is, because let's say you arrive in Cape Town on the Monday, you'll be on the other end of the garden route by the Sunday, and you would have seen a diversity of foods, landscapes, beaches, everything in that, and even wildlife for that matter as well. So when they were here, I would always ask friends of mine before they come to visit. I would ask them, what is your wish list? So what do you want to experience? What do you want to see? I would always ask them, obviously, their budget, just to keep within that. And then always their timeline, how long they would like to stay. And then I would know I kind of graft and create a specific tour for them with their needs. And I've done 3 of them, and all 3 of them have loved every single moment of it. It doesn't always mean that you have to go to Johannesburg because you have to go see the animals. They're also down here. We do live in Africa, so we can find them pretty much anywhere. And so that's why I would always be a very big spokesperson for the garden route itself, because of its diversity and its cultures along the way as well.
How long would that normally take?
So it's the longest wine route in the world. So from Cape Town to Plettenberg Bay, which is the end of the garden route, I would say, Annie, perhaps you can help me, and I think it's about a total of 8 hours if you're driving modestly.
Okay.
I would say if you do the garden route, I would say you should plan a week for that at least.
Oh, absolutely. You have to stay over here and there just along the way, because there's so many beautiful places along the way. And one thing I've noticed that the 3 different tours I've all mentioned is that it changes so quickly. you'll be an hour into the road trip, and it will have changed completely the way it looks, the flora, the animals and everything like that as well, which is great. So I always recommend the garden route because of its diversity, and then obviously, like Annie said, to stay over or to create at least a week trip for it, because you would want to stay over, perhaps more days than others. Yeah.
Amazing. That's so perfect. Yeah. So it's fairly easy then, would you like to drive it?
Yeah, it's very easy. You can do the self-drive. There's so many self-drive trips that people actually have done. But you can also get a tour guide if you feel safer with a tour guide. You can translate and you can show you the ins and outs of every little area, which is always good to know as well. But yeah, it's a self-drive, easy. It's on the national road. It's a little detour here and there. Oh, bringing me to that, I would also say take the road less traveled. There's so many little back roads that gives you alleyways to some of the unique characters you will meet throughout our country, as well as the different little towns that you won't necessarily get to go to when you do a group tour, for example. It's the same kind of length in your journey, your 7-day trip or whatever, but you'll be able to see a little bit more than the average Joe would on a normal trip.
Amazing. Annie, I mean, you run a travel company in tourism. I mean, can you give us any insight into what people are drawn to or what they really enjoy once they're there?
Yes, as Peter said, the country is so diverse that we have 9 provinces, and each province will offer you a different vegetation and different landscape. So I almost want to say, once you've come to South Africa, people often come back because it's such a big country. Although it's only the size of Texas, more or less, there's so much to see and do. Only the garden route alone will take you a week at least. But a big favorite is obviously the animals. And although you can see them in the Western Cape, the real, the fantastic area is the Kruger National Park. It's really fantastic. It's just I think it's one of the best in the world. So I would always say try and include the northern part. There's also the biggest green canyon in the world. It's called the Blyde River Canyon, like the Happy Canyon. It's truly amazing. So if you could include your canyon there, the animals, and then from there travel to KwaZulu-Natal, which we just learned of. It's also a beautiful province with all the lovely mangoes and and bananas that was just mentioned. Also, there's a lot of animals. Also, within KwaZulu-Natal, there's 2 World Heritage Sites, which is well worth a visit, where you can see the big, the leatherback. Sorry, I often speak German, so then I forget the English word. The big tortoises, within the ocean. They're bigger than me. You can see them in certain times of the year coming to the beach, laying their eggs. It's absolutely amazing. And then from there you can go to the Drakensberg, which is the highest mountain range within South Africa. If you're a hiker, it's fantastic. And then from there onto Peter's garden route, you could fly down from Durban, which is in KwaZulu-Natal. You could fly down to Port Elizabeth, and then from there start the garden route trip. And obviously Cape Town is the cherry on the cake. In the penguins and the southern tip of Africa and the southwestern tip of Africa and Cape Town itself. And this time of year, the West Coast is superb. I would say the West Coast is normally a little bit like the Greek islands, fairly dry. But in August, September, it's just absolutely spectacular. It's just carpets and carpets of different colors of flowers. And then there's also the best restaurant in the world. So not to be missed on top of all of that. And it's a golfer's mecca as well. People that love playing golf. It's very popular for people to come to South Africa with the idea of playing golf, maybe one day golf, one day sightseeing, another day good food, and so forth. Yeah.
Oh, it sounds heavenly.
It is heavenly.
Sounds heavenly. Yeah, any recommendations, I guess, in maneuvering through, like with domestic travel? Is it, someone that might be new or planning on their own or looking into it? Is it self-drive, flights, buses? What options do travelers have?
I would say within South Africa, it's best if you want to travel on your own, it's best to hire a car. Our public transport is not so good. Yeah, I think you will need a lot of time if you don't hire a car, if you want to travel on your own. There are small bus companies that you can use. There's one, for instance, called Bears Bus. But still, you need time. So it would be the best idea to hire a car if you want to travel on your own, I would say.
I completely agree with Annie there, because if you, let's say, for example, you do drive from one side of the country to another, which you can also do, and you find that you found this hidden little gem because you took one of the back roads, the road less traveled, and you discovered this place called Hogsback in the Eastern Cape, for example, then you want to stay there for another day or two just because you fell in love with it, perhaps for a personal reason or not. Whereas compared to a tour bus, you won't have that luxury of staying behind for another day or two.
Yeah, so a bit of flexibility and freedom. Perfect. Courtney and Sine, is there anything you'd like to add, places or things that people should definitely make time to see?
I think myself, personally, I'm not a wine drinker, but I love visiting wine farms. The wine farms in the Cape region are beautiful. So we have some of the best wine in the world as well. I remember I went on a tour of a wine farm in Constantia. It's a very lovely suburb here, quite very upper class side of the world over there. And they have this wine farm called Constantia, which means big Constantia. So it was one of the, I think, first wine farms, and they used to export wine all over the world. I mean, Napoleon, as in short Napoleon, they used to send wine. They used to send wine from Constantia that side because he wanted that particular wine. So that wine was probably one of the best wines in the world at the time. I think they still have one bottle on the premises that obviously will never be sold or opened. But I think if you are a wine drinker, I think that the Cape region, especially areas like Stellenbosch and Franschhoek, those are quite popular amongst wine drinkers. In Franschhoek, they have a wine tram where you can literally take a little train through the town, and you can stop at different wine farms. The place is littered with wine farms everywhere. Stellenbosch as well, and it's beautiful and green and leafy. I go out and drive there just because I enjoy the scenery. And there's cute restaurants all over the place, restaurants on wine farms as well. So there's never a shortage of things to see when you're here. And I know I'm in another travel group. It's a all-female travel group, also thousands and thousands of people. And usually the question when people come to South Africa, they say, where can I get good wine? And I was like, hey, is that what people think of when they want to travel here? So definitely the Cape
Priority.
Region. Yeah, the Cape region is a good if you enjoy fine wine, and you get all different kinds of wine here. You can take there's a nice place called the Spice Route. It's out in Paarlside. There's different like chocolate tasting there. There's beer tastings, wine tastings. You can just, all you need to do is Google wine tasting Cape Town. You'll find hundreds and hundreds of experiences. Wine pairings. So you get wine and biltong pairings, wine and chocolate pairings. You get all sorts of things. So yeah, I think that would be a good option. I know there's not one that we spoke about yet, so I thought I'd just mention that.
If I may add to Courtney there's a company called Wineflies South Africa. So the Wineflies is literally a little bus. It picks you up at your hotel, takes you to 5 boutique wineries with lunch included, and obviously you can buy the wine there as well. And then they safely drop you back home at your hotel, which is a great service, I think, especially if you had a few glasses of wine.
Oh, that sounds perfect. No, that's amazing. And I guess I'm curious to know, because in this day and age we have Instagram and social media, and sometimes things get overexposed, especially with over tourism and everything. Is there anything in South Africa that you think is kind of overrated that can be bypassed or substituted with something else, or is everything still kind of at a level where it's all worth seeing? Does anyone, I don't know, maybe there isn't, but I'm just curious.
I think
To be honest, I don't think
when
there's any. Sorry, Courtney, go ahead.
no, sorry, I was going to say, when you live here, I think you take for granted how beautiful the place is. So there are places that are hyped up, but I think as a tourist, there's probably more wonderment around the places than there are for the locals. I can't highlight, or I can't think of one particular spot that as an example, but maybe Peter, sorry I interrupted your word as well, maybe you appreciate.
No. What I would have said is like, I work outside of South Africa, and I come back, and every time I come back, I always think this is the best place. You know, like we have such a diverse country and people and everything that I personally, and I know I'm being biased by saying this, I humbly think that South Africa is one of the greatest countries to visit. And all the hype that you see online, on Instagram, on wherever that they are telling you to come and see, is definitely worth coming to see. What I would say, which kind of is the flip side to this coin, is that some of the negatives that you hear abroad might not always be as factual. Yes, we do have issues in our country, and we do have crime, and we do have things like that, but not like it's the same as any other big city, I would say. I think, I don't know how to politely say this, but Trump made a comment about South Africa about being a certain kind of a place, and I don't think it is that at all. I think once you've come here and realized this, and I think once you've actually explored by yourself before judging a cover of the book, that you would find it's a pretty interesting read visiting South Africa.
Yes,
Yeah,
I do agree
That's
with Peter.
powerful, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I do agree with all of them. I mean, I go to Table Mountain so often, and Lion's Head and Cape Point and the penguins, and just the nature. The landscape is, I think it's breathtaking. Yeah, it's worth every good word that's been said. It's true.
Yeah, you don't get tired of it, right? I can tell. I mean, you're beaming just talking about it, and I think that speaks for itself. Yeah. And Sine, I mean, you opened us up to, you know, just all the possibilities also of just going to different parts of the country, like up north and everything as well. And I think, yeah, that's so helpful to know. Yeah, you can kind of explore and go off the beaten path.
Definitely. For me also, I think I don't think there's anything that's overhyped. I really think that every little thing that you've heard about South Africa, you would want to experience. We spoke a bit earlier on about traveling around the country, and there's the red bus tour that happens in Cape Town. That's something that would be interesting for tourists in order for them to see Cape Town for what it is, the beauty side of it. But also there's a part of that red bus ride that I recently found out about, that if you would like to go into the informal settlements, they do provide a taxi tour for you as well, that you're able to jump into a taxi and go around. I think it's Ilanga Township that you can go through, and then you can hop on the bus and go back to wherever you came from. In Durban as well, they have what we call a rickshaw. I think that's how you pronounce it in English, rickshaw. A guy who basically has sort of like a wagon sort of tied onto him, and he jumps around town on the promenade, taking you around, and you see the beaches and everything. You can stop to grab a quick bite or whatever the case is. So there's different ways to experience different parts of the country. Just always make sure you're safe.
That's perfect. Thank you guys for all of that amazing tips. Yeah, definitely not the stuff you can find on Google. And, you know, I like to always take this perspective of also what music is, how significant it is in a culture, because I think music is can be a part of the storytelling of a culture. Are there, I guess, any your favorite songs or artists or things that you would want, that you could suggest to people to maybe listen to or, you know, look up, just so they can become more aware of music from South Africa?
Sandy, the #1 Shazam song in the whole entire world is a South African. It's called Jerusalema. and it's a banger, and we can dance to it all night if you want. It's a really good one at the moment. But just to add to that, I think being such a diverse country and being 11 official languages is pretty difficult to to say music in itself. But every culture has their own music stars. But I also feel that South Africans internationally have made it in a very big way. If you think about Hollywood itself, you have Arnold Vosloo, who was the Mummy. You have Charlize Theron, who is amazing. Musically, we have Seether, who was a rock band, alternative rock band. We have The Antwoord, which is a surreal hip-hop rap group. We have Trevor Noah, we have Elon Musk, and even Harry Potter or Daniel Radcliffe's mom is South African, you know. So all of these different things kind of amalgamate into this beautiful country of ours, of all different flavors and different sounds. And I think it was Courtney, or was it Sanay, who earlier said that we like dancing, and I think that comes to every culture, you know, from folkspelen, which was our way back in the Afrikaner with the great track, started with folkspelen and dancing together. Still, we have that. It's they call it kind of windsurfing. You dance together. I don't know. So we have that in Afrikaans, and we also have very many different kind of rap, hip hop, rock and roll, and anything like that. Every kind of genre you can think of, we have a really good artist in that. Yuma Sakela, another great jazz musician, for example, that as a great example of that as well. Yeah.
Nice. When I like to do research or plan road trips or travel plans, I like to actually start off by making a playlist from that country and then listen to it as I do it. So it gets me in the mood. So
Shakira is not South African, just saying. That's just
anything else from the panelists as far as like music goes or traditions in that sense?
Not so much from me. I think Peter summed it up quite well.
Yeah.
The different cultures have different music that they enjoy. So I think it will be very difficult to ask one South African, you know, or even just the four of us, what would go on a playlist. I mean, everyone's taste in music is so different. And you find what I'm noticing more and more is that a few years ago when I was younger, it would be that certain cultures like certain types of music and they would just listen to that sort of music. But now in this day and age, all the different cultures are listening to all different kinds of music, and sometimes there are collaborations of two different kinds of music that come together. So I think it is quite a broad thing.
100%, Courtney. And just to add to that, to add to the diversity of the music is the fact that you could not understand the lyrics of the song, but we would all be dancing the same tune.
That's true.
And we'll all just mix and we'll gel with it. So definitely, there's no one particular song that I would say don't listen to this.
There's a song called Kalakata. That song is for every culture in the world.
Still today. It's a very old song, but it's also relevant today.
Isn't that true that there's always that one song where like everyone just like it's like, oh, and they like all get it, they just know it, right? It resonates. Amazing. Guys, as we get to kind of the top of the hour, I just wanted to, I guess, give each of you a platform to kind of talk to this wider audience on your own personal level as to any last thoughts you would want to, or last wisdoms maybe you want to impart with them about visiting South Africa, or, you know, anything that you would want for them to know. Peter, I'll start with you because I think you might have to leave soon if you're still there or still with us.
That's me.
Yeah.
I honestly, thank you so much. Again, this was amazing. I would love to do this again someday. It's great not only to share some wisdom from my side, but also to learn from other people on the panel. But what I would like to leave you with is local is lekker. And that's a good word for anybody to learn is lekker. It means it can be anything. It can be food, it can be wine, it could be anything. It means good. And I'd say South Africa surpasses lekker. It's more than lekker. It's everything. And for you to be able to understand that, you'll have to come and visit and see it yourself.
Challenge accepted. Okay. Amazing. Thank you, Peter. Courtney, do you anything you want to share?
I think South Africa is very underrated. A lot of people that I've chatted to in the travel group I mentioned didn't even consider South Africa until they'd heard more about it, because a lot of the time South Africa is what the media paints it out to be. They think everything is dusty, everyone is hungry, we have animals everywhere, and it's not like that at all. I'm not saying that there aren't pockets that exist. I mean, the socioeconomic gaps are so wide in this country. You have extremely wealthy and you also have extremely, extremely poor. But I don't think that I don't think South Africa is very well represented in the media at large. So I think it's definitely a great country to visit. There are so many pockets of nice places. And a lot of times when I share about South Africa, people are always surprised, like, oh wow. I remember the one time I went live on I can't remember what it's the Twitter when Twitter had that video app. I can't even remember what it was called. But I remember I went live and I was in a shopping mall, and one girl commented, "Oh, you have shopping malls in Africa." And I thought, what? Of course we do. So I was quite surprised, because everyone has their own perception of what it's like. But I think it's really beautiful. And what I can appreciate about the rest of the world is when you talk about South Africa, people always listen to what you have to say, because they don't really know much about it, and they'll ask more questions. So what I will also say about South Africa is that when you do visit, as beautiful as it is, don't be naive with your possessions. Be very careful with your possessions. Always remain vigilant. So yeah, I think just as beautiful as the place is, it's also just don't relax too much where you forget about things that you need to look after and all of those sorts of things. So always be careful. I mean, the world over, it's become a very dangerous sort of place. But always be careful where you are, and always be mindful of your surroundings. I think that's the main thing. I mean, we even tell South Africans that also. So I remember a friend of mine is from Canada, and her mom came to visit. And her mom couldn't understand why, when her daughter had gone out quickly to the shops, she couldn't understand why she had to lock her into the flat and said, okay, don't unlock, just stay inside till I get back. And so it also depends on which area that you're in. But I think as much as you enjoy it, just be mindful. And another thing, on the places to visit, there was something that Sunday mentioned, and then I realized township tours, they do that as well. So those are the in the poorer areas, they're now doing in the township areas tours, because the townships also have a whole culture of their own, and every township is different as well. So there are places and the locals in the townships, and they run township tours. So it's very easy to find. All you have to do is Google township tours and it'll come up. And that's a safe way of exploring, because as a foreigner on your own, you will get lost, you will get overwhelmed. So it's not, I wouldn't say go in there by yourself. Do it within a tour. You get to experience the street food, the street culture. It's a very community vibe compared to other places in South Africa. So that would be a nice way of seeing. If you want to go wine farm, but then put a township tour in, and you'll see the big difference between the places. So every place has its own beauty. So I would say do something like that where you can see both sides of the spectrum of South Africa.
Yeah, great tip. Yeah, gain some perspective.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sine, anything you want to share?
Yes, of course. I would like to definitely echo what Courtney has just mentioned here as well. We are a very, very beautiful country, and we do also have a bit of the not so nice side of us as well. When I relocated from Durban to Cape Town, I got a chance to actually drive from Durban to Cape Town, and just to see the different scenery. I think it was the first time I'd actually gone through the Eastern Cape, and just to see the greenery and just be amazed by my own country. It took me relocating to see that part of it. I think Peter was the one who was speaking about the roads less traveled. Those roads are worth it. They're worth it. The cultures that you get to see, be open-minded. You may find that you have never eaten chicken's feet before, but you realize that in South Africa, something that you would want to try once in a while and write a story about or blog about it. Try whatever you are comfortable to try. Be safe. And as Courtney mentioned, the township culture is also something that we don't speak too much about, but it is something beautiful and something worth giving a try. Thank you for
Thank you, Sine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Annie, any final words, thoughts?
Yes, I do agree with the township tours. It's really very, very interesting. And the landscapes that was mentioned, the scenery, it's so beautiful. The wine farms. What I did this when this whole COVID thing started, I made a blog and I traveled throughout the country. So if someone wants to get more information on the country, it's all on my blog. It's if they want to have a look, it's anniestours.blogspot.com. I've traveled through the different provinces, added some information there, and hopefully it might help someone when they want to travel the country.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we'll throw it in the comments, everyone, so that they can, as they're watching this, if they want to check it out, they can do so. But thank you, Annie, Courtney, Sine, Peter, so much
Thank you,
for
Sandy.
your insights and for taking the time to share a little bit of South Africa with each and every one of us. I have thoroughly enjoyed it and I've learned so much. So thank you again.
We expect to see you here once the borders open, Sandy.
Okay, expect me there. Careful, Peter. I'm there. I'll be there with my playlist. Trust me. All right. Well, thank you once again. And thank you to everyone that's joined us today. I hope you were able to learn a little bit. And yeah, hope you have South Africa on your sites as well. So have a good one, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.